monsters and creatures are extremely important to any horror game. These things that go bump in the night are exactly what helps build up the tension and fear throughout the experience. And with so many terrifying video games out there, of course there are plenty of iconic creatures in video games. And on this episode of Nerd Space, we are going to dive down into every single scary game that I can think of and pick out the most iconic creatures. To make things interesting, we're only looking at the regular monsters and creatures in the game. So no boss enemies, but maybe that could be a different list in the future. Also, to keep things fresh, I am only picking one monster per video game franchise. By the way, I just want to give a shout out real quick. This is a video that was chosen by one of my stars, Alpha team member, Patreons, Javirod. Thanks man so much for your pick at this list video, as this one seems really exciting to do. But anyways, if you guys are interested in becoming a Stars Alpha team member just like Javirod, the link is in the description below. Help support the channel while also getting some benefits like this that allows you to pick a list video once per month. So with that said, my name is Ruben with Nerd Space Games, and this is my top 10 most iconic monsters in video games. Let's get it. Number 10, Wendigos from Until Dawn. Before Until Dawn, a Wendigo wasn't exactly a creature that has been explored a lot in video games. Sure, there were a few, but it was Until Dawn that really brought it out of its shell in video games. And man, did they make a mark. You would assume with a game that has little to no gameplay that the monsters appearing in it probably wouldn't come off as that intimidating. However, these bad boys are no fucking joke. Every time one of these creatures are on the screen, anxiety fills the air. These things can only see you if you move or make any sounds. Therefore, the players are put through intense moments of trying to keep the characters still and quiet in order to save as many of them as possible. The design, the sound of the creatures, and even the isolated location of the cabin in the mountains all combine to make one of the most iconic types of monsters in video games. Number 9, Animatronics, Five Nights at Freddy's. The argument could be made that these mechanical death traps are not technically monsters. But you know what? I think they are close enough. And with that said, Five Nights at Freddy's is definitely one of the most iconic horror game franchises out there. Seriously, I don't think there is a game with a better jump scare than some of the games in this series. And these animatronics don't play around. Whether it be the creepy ass look on these animatronics or just that terrifying scream they make, these things seriously shake me to my core. It's hard to argue that these are not one of the most iconic monsters in video games when these guys are now getting their own movie by Blumhouse later this year. And it's a franchise that has more entries in this series than even Silent Hill. Number 8, Mimics, Prey. Honestly, I can see people being upset with something like Mimics appearing higher than animatronics from Five Nights at Freddy's. And I don't blame you, this could be just from my own love for the game Prey. But a key trait to these alien creatures is the ability to shapeshift. And this ability really makes them stand out a lot compared to other scary games. Mimics are terrifying. They can shapeshift into chairs or small trash cans to disguise their location. Then as you get closer to them, they can immediately shift back into their natural form and attack you, which obviously catches you off guard and forces you to panic in order to put them down. It's a creature that I truly believe could have been top 5 territory for one of the most iconic types of monsters in video games if the series was just given the chance to continue on. Unfortunately, with only one unpopular game featuring these creatures, it's hard to put it any higher on this list. With that being said, I think mimics are some of the most creative monsters in video games, and I hope we can see them return in some capacity in the future.
Good look at it. In a moment, I'm going to ask you what... Is my coffee? It's empty.
Number 7, Ghost Fatal Frame. Obviously, ghosts are extremely common in a lot of video games out there, especially first-person horror games. However, this entry focuses on ghosts and Fatal Frame. The reason why they deserve their own entry is because these ghosts in this game really create a unique gameplay experience. From the bent neck woman to the wandering man, there are plenty of different types of ghosts in the Fatal Frame series. Something that makes them stand out and feel different compared to other ghosts in other games is that instead of running away from them like you do in most games about ghosts, you instead have to face them head on with nothing but a camera. To defeat these floating creatures, you need to take pictures of them. It's a game mechanic that forces you to confront your fears instead of running away from them. Number 6, Gatherers, Amnesia: The Dark Descent. Amnesia is one of the best first-person horror video game franchises. The most recent entry is of course The Bunker, which is a masterpiece. However, it was The Dark Descent that put Amnesia on the map. What really made this game stand out though was the constant confrontation with creatures in this game known as the Gatherers. They are terrifying, horrifying, deformed monsters that chase the players throughout the castle. And since the player isn't exactly given anything to fight back against them with, the only thing you can do when you see one of these creatures is run or hide. These monsters move quickly though, so if you find yourself taking the wrong turn, then running could easily lead to disaster for you. And hearing the sounds they make as they chase you definitely makes you forget where you're going at times. Hiding is just as bad though, because looking at them raises your sanity meter, which means you are going to have to trust that your hiding spot is good enough because you won't be able to look at them directly to see if they're heading towards you or not. And let me tell you, that's rough. The entire encounter with these creatures is intense, and it is part of what made that first game such an amazing horror game. For that reason, of course, it deserves a spot on this list. Number 5, Witches, Left 4 Dead.
Witch! Stop freaking out the damn witch!
A lot of the monsters up until now, as long as you are careful, you can pretty much defeat easily. However, let me introduce you to one of the most dangerous monsters on this list, the Witch in Left 4 Dead. The witches are the most terrifying creatures to come across while playing Left 4 Dead for multiple different reasons. Firstly, they are creepy to just approach thanks to their constant crying. As soon as you hear one of them, everybody on your team immediately tenses up. Also, the design of them are truly terrifying. With red eyes, a creepy slender look, and claws sharp and long enough to put down an elephant. Yeah, you don't want to mess with a creature like that. Which brings me to the third point. They will fuck you up. See, with the witches in Left 4 Dead, you are able to avoid alerting them. Don't get too close or point your flashlight at them, and maybe you will avoid the entire encounter. However, if just one member of your team makes a vital mistake here, it could easily be their last. That's because alerting these spawn and Satan monsters leads them to viciously attacking the player that alerted them until she's killed the player or the rest of the players kill her. And if you are playing on the harder difficulties, then it'll probably most likely be the case of her killing the player. Number 4, Necromorphs, Dead Space.
Quarantine activated.
Another malfunction?
No, the quarantine systems are all fine.
Oh, wait, do you hear that?
Yeah, I hear it.
Yeah, man.
Take it easy. Daniel, get those elevators running.
There's something in here with us.
The Mimics are not the only alien type monsters on this list, and they are definitely not the most iconic. Meet the Necromorphs. These creatures in space are some of the most terrifying and memorable monsters in video games. One thing about these guys is that they come in all shapes and forms. The most common is the slasher. They'll pop out events randomly throughout the game, and the only way to truly put them down for good is by removing all of their limbs. These monsters are basically space zombies, meaning they just keep coming and coming. The Dead Space remake is what really made them even more terrifying though, with the random encounters added to the game to make them even more unpredictable. These guys become some of the scariest monsters to go up against, not to mention that Dead Space thrives in the dark. For some reason, every single area you come across is suffering from power outages, making these creatures even more deadly as they are harder to see coming. Necromorphs may not have the same capabilities as the Mimics, but they are definitely more iconic with their design, the ability to bring fear to the player just with their sound design, and the intimidation factor they bring with constantly coming at the players until you remove the limbs. Number 3, Clickers, The Last of Us. I know Last of Us definitely fits more in line with action horror, but it's still a pretty intense and scary game, especially with monsters like the Clickers. These guys have the ability to instant kill the player. All they have to do is get close enough. The first and most iconic thing about these creatures though is the sound design. As I'm sure you probably already guessed with their name, the creatures make this clicking sound as you get closer to them. The moment you hear this sound, you better immediately go into stealth mode, because making too much noise or getting caught by one of these creatures will set them off on you, and that's deadly. However, the other problem with them is that they can take a ton of damage, so you better be ready to fork out a lot of ammo if you plan on putting one of these guys down for good. These creatures also have a terrifying design, as it seems like the fungus has completely taken over their body, causing them to be blind. Between the look of these guys, the sound they make, and the fact that they have the ability to instantly kill the player makes them one of the most terrifying creatures in video games, hence making them one of the most memorable creatures and deserving to go on this list. Number 2, Nurses, Silent Hill. There are two things that most people instantly remember about the creatures in Silent Hill. One is of course Pyramid Head. However, since we're not focusing on bosses, let's take a look at the second thing that people immediately think of when we're looking at creatures in Silent Hill. That is the nurses. If you've never played Silent Hill, then you are probably confused as to how nurses can be some of the most iconic creatures in video games. Well, let me tell you, nurses in Silent Hill are no joke. See, in Silent Hill, the nurses' faces are covered. No eyes, just a creepy ass blank face to look at. Their bodies look like dead pale white skin, which gives them a zombie-like feel to them. But they also carry a deadly lead pipe as a weapon, meaning they can do some serious damage to you if they get close enough. Yet none of these are even the most iconic features of the nurse in the Silent Hill games. What truly makes them one of the scariest monsters in video games, and therefore one of the most iconic, comes down to their movements. That's because they start off as being completely still, then they suddenly move in a twitch-like manner, like a puppet being controlled by a puppeteer. These things twitch and walk in the creepiest manner that I have ever seen in any video game. Just running into one of these nurses immediately scares the hell out of me by watching them walk towards me with the lead pipe. Do not underestimate a nurse in Silent Hill. That's all I have to say about that. Number 1, Zombies Resident Evil. Obviously, a Resident Evil entry needs to be number 1. With Resident Evil being the number 1 horror franchise out there, in my opinion, this was a no-brainer. With that said, there are so many iconic creatures to choose from. The hunters are deadly as hell with their claws and the ability to pounce and attack the player. The licker sound effects really makes the players tremble as soon as you hear them in the area. However, it doesn't seem right to pick any of these over the most iconic creature ever in a video game, zombies. Yes, I know, it's basic. Zombies are not too creative and we see it time and time again in video games. However, it's because of how well they were used in the original trilogy of Resident Evil why this happens. Ever since then, we see plenty of games out there trying to mimic the feel of those games. Think back to the first ever appearance of a zombie in Resident Evil. The first scene with one feeding on your teammate and then slowly turning around. It's a powerful scene that instantly screams terror. It sets up the most iconic creature in the franchise perfectly. Seeing these guys return again and again proves that these creatures are the best in video games. Without them, Resident Evil doesn't establish this genre, and who knows where horror games would be without them. But let me know what you guys think. For the most iconic creature, should zombies really be here, or do you think it should be maybe the hunter or the licker instead? Let me know, guys. But that does it for this episode of Nerdspace Games. Hit up the comments and let me know, what monster do you think is the most iconic creature in video games? Did it make the top 10 or did I miss out on it? Anyway, if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button for more ranking videos like this one, as well as leaving a like on this video to help your boy out with getting this video out there to as many people as possible. But as always, I'll catch you guys on the next episode of Nerdspace Games. Take care.